We are introduced to Steve Rogers in prison, but this Steve is much different than the regular Captain America we know. He is mild-mannered, small, and seems like a totally non-superhuman person. Steve is afraid as he does not know why he is in this prison. He does not remember how he got there or what happened to him. Soon, Steve meets the guy that is in the cell next to him. This guy is a bit overweight, and he seems nice and confused. The most insane part comes when Steve finds out that this prisoner is also called Steve Rogers. Both of these Steves have never heard about the super soldier serum, nor the Avengers. They are just a couple of totally normal guys from New York. The overweight Steve tells the other Steve that they have been in this prison for a while and they are not the only ones there. It seems that there are other prisoners inside, and they are all named Steve. There is even a sweet dog called Steve as well. This is really confusing. Soon the Steves are introduced to a more deranged and strange Steve. He is an older guy who has a beard and he seems to be crazy. This Steve thinks that they are all political prisoners and he wants to get out of here. We also see that this giant prison cell actually has a door opened. This door is totally covered in darkness and no one can see what is in there. The older Steve rushes inside every day trying to escape, but every day he fails. He returns, beaten and tired. It seems that there is someone in the darkness finding him and kicking him back in the cell. There is another Steve in the prison. He is covered in shadows and he only sits in his prison cell. He seems to be very old and grumpy. He constantly tells the other Steves that there is no way out of here and they are doomed to stay here forever. The bearded Steve is certain that he can get out, so he keeps trying day after day. He goes into the darkness and fights whatever is there. He is never able to fight off the enemy and always flees injured and beaten. One day he confirms that there is one person there and he always knows where to hit no matter what. Days go by and Steve tries all the time. He tries to convince the other Steves to join in, but they are not listening. The overweight and meek Steve just wants to be left alone. Still, all of them want to go back home. They talk about how they got brought into this prison. One of them was just going to his job and suddenly he was transported to this prison cell. The other was in his bed when he felt that someone was in the room with him and then he was transported into the prison. They do not remember anything else. Days go by and the bearded Steve is still trying, but he always fails. Finally, the skinny Steve decides to join. He wants to get out of here and he decides to help. The two of them go through the door and in seconds they are back inside totally injured. They realize that no matter how they move, they get knocked down. Then the dog Steve also joins them and they try a different tactic. The dog can distract the enemy and act as bait and they might be able to win. This also does not work and they are right back at square one. They now start to train all of them. The bearded Steve does push-ups. The small and weak Steve tries to get stronger. Even the dog is trying to get stronger. The old Steve that has not come out of his cell tells them that they are idiots for trying and that there is no way to leave. Finally, the weak Steve manages to convince the overweight one to join them. The overweight Steve is a kind person and he also wants to finally be free. They all try and this time they get a bit further but still fail really easily. They now start to beg the older Steve to join them. They need his help to leave and they are convinced that they can do it. Finally, after many days, old Steve leaves the prison cell and decides to join them. At that point, it's revealed that this Steve is old. He has one missing eye and for some reason he has wolverine claws. Now all of the Steves team up and finally leave. Now they have enough power to fight their enemies. They use their tactic, strength and teamwork to get free. The Wolverine Steve is very strong and he manages to take down the enemies. The others dodge every obstacle and soon they also defeat the enemies. Finally, all the Steves get their own Captain America shield. At that moment we see who has been testing them this entire time. We see a team of Captain Americas, all of them different and special in their own way. This team of Captain Americas praises the Steves and tell them that now their training is finished. It's time to move on to the second part. They are going into war. We then learn what is really happening. From the control room above we see Robbie Reyes, who is Ghost Rider. We see Deathlock and also Ant-Man from Earth 818. It seems that they have come together and now they are gathering Steve Rogers from the multiverse. They are building an army to fight the war with the multiversal masters of evil. They now have many Captain Americas as part of their army, but it's still not enough. They have to find more. Soon they find out about Steve Rogers, who did not become Captain America but he became Hulk. They plan to continue their mission to win the war. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel.